Welcome to the Decipher podcast. I'm Dennis Fisher. I'm here with my colleague Lindsey O'Donnell-Welch to talk a little bit about a couple of news items that popped up in the last 24 hours, Linz. It's the week before 4th of July here in the U.S., and we both know what that means. It means a whole
Always
bunch of
fun.
bad things are going to happen.
Yeah.
So couple interesting things in the last 24 hours. I think the first one we saw yesterday was a notice from TeamViewer, very popular remote access software provider, put out a pretty terse notice, at first at least, saying that they had detected some unusual activity in their network and had taken steps to, contain it. And they specifically said it was their corporate environment, not their product environment. The two are separated as they should be. And that was kind of all the details. But then you woke up this morning and saw an email from them saying, hey, guess what? Here's some more information.
Yeah. Always good to get more details at early morning before my coffee.
On a
But
Friday, of course.
yeah. So basically now TeamViewer has come out and they've provided some more information around the attack. They have said that the attack was tied to credentials of a standard employee account, and that's specifically how they phrased it.
Right.
And that account is within its corporate IT environment. And then they've also gone ahead and attributed the activity to APT29, which is this pretty well-known Russian threat actor that we also know as Midnight Blizzard and a couple of other names. And it's been around for, quite a
Really
long
long
time,
time.
almost more than a decade, and has also been behind a couple of other big high profile attacks, including just this year against Microsoft, against HPE, some other big companies there.
Right.
So yeah, this was, provide some more context around kind of how the attack played out. And, I think we'll see the investigation is still ongoing. So we'll see more details kind of emerge as we get closer to 4th of July. But
I'm sure. Yeah.
yeah,
It probably somewhere around July 3rd afternoon, as everyone is, shutting their laptops down for a weekend.
exactly.
I imagine there will be something. But there were a couple interesting things in this story that you wrote this morning for us. That phrase you mentioned, a standard employee account, which is an odd phrasing to me. I don't really recall seeing that too often in these kind of notices.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's a way to distinguish it from, say, a developer account or an admin account or some sort of super user account.
Right.
And they also said that it was tied to credentials for that account. It didn't say that those credentials had been compromised or that they had been stolen in any way. It just said they were tied to that. So, I mean, that opens up a few other possibilities. It's just sort of some odd, phrasing and syntax there that kind of caught my attention.
Yeah, the phrasing was very specific, and I'm sure all kinds of, legal teams and PR teams were involved there. But yeah, but I did ask TeamViewer, about kind of that phrasing and if they could detail if it was compromised or if MFA was enabled on that specific account, and they weren't. They didn't share any further details beyond the statement. So I think that's something else where, in the coming weeks we'll learn a little bit more about that specific attack. I will say that I know that APT29, because, after the whole Microsoft incident with APT29, CISA came out with some further details about them. And
Yep.
one thing that they specifically talked about is how when they use a couple different methods to gain an initial access. And I know that they've used tactics like password spraying, like brute forcing attacks. So I think there are a couple methods that historically they've used to target credentials or looking at compromised
Yes.
credentials.
Right. And I think it was that same CISA advisory where they also said that APT29 is starting to move to cloud platform attacks. So, I mean, we don't know if that was involved in this at all. We have no idea. This could have been just a network attack. We don't know. But this is not a group that stands still and just plays the hits. They evolve their tactics. They know what they're doing. I mean, this is Cozy Bear. This is the SVR. This is a very capable Russian threat actor that knows what they're doing. This is the varsity. This isn't like the JV team trying to kick down their door. They know exactly what they're doing.
Right, right. And one other thing that kind of stuck out to me during this, while I was writing this piece was that yesterday when the disclosure first came out, there were a couple of other third party advisories as well, one from
Yeah,
NCC Group and one from the Health Information Sharing and Analysis Center. Don't want to mess that up.
got it.
And, it was interesting because those were all private notifications. So they were, I learned that, they were under the TLP Amber strict disclosure classification, meaning that it's only for impacted organization customers. But now that, this disclosure has been broadened a little bit, at least NCC Group has made their threat intel, more widely available. So they have released some information about kind of what they're seeing, and they basically the statement on their website by Matt Hull, who's the global head of threat intel with NCC Group, said that he says, we advise that until further details are known about the type of compromised TeamViewer has been subjected to, removal of TeamViewer from your estate will assist in mitigating any potential compromise via this vector. So that was an interesting aspect of all of that too. Just seeing this, how third parties are kind of approaching this from what they're seeing in terms of threat intel.
Very much so. And for people who aren't familiar, NCC Group is a very high level security group. Mostly do a lot of stuff in Europe and the UK, but has a presence here in the US too. Very, very capable group. And if they're telling people to remove this from their environments, that they're not doing that idly. That's not just them throwing things against the wall.
Right.
They probably have good reason for that. So,
Right.
it's something to certainly pay attention to. Um, and so, along the same lines with APT29, there was a story that came out yesterday. I believe it was from Bloomberg, talking about how in that previous Microsoft breach you mentioned earlier, Linz, that Microsoft is now notifying more customers that those customers' emails had been accessed. For folks that don't know all the details about that previous breach, I don't remember exactly when Microsoft disclosed this, but it was earlier this year and said that APT29 had gotten into Microsoft's corporate environment and had access to some email communications between, I believe, a small group of executives and customers. So some, including some government agencies here in the U.S. So some very sensitive communication. So this seems like maybe as the investigation has gone on, they've discovered more victims of this or more organizations that were affected, putting out some more notifications. Not the biggest surprise in the world, but it
Mhm.
does show that these things really do tend to have very long tails that end up, going on for quite a while.
That's what stuck out to me too is, this team viewer attack just occurred or was just, discovered this past week. But if you look at the Microsoft APT29 attack, that was, I think it was back in January when it was first
That sounds right.
it first came out. And I mean, this is what, like 6 months later, they're still finding new customers that have been impacting and unearthing new details. It's a little bit we don't really know what's out there right now, where this is going to go, and
No,
it's very concerning.
it is, yeah, and it's not surprising, but at the same time, it's one of those things where you're a little bit disheartened by it because you think, okay, this is Microsoft, a very mature and capable security organization.
Hmm.
So we think so. That is still discovering issues from an intrusion, 6 months ago. You would have thought they'd had this wrapped up by now, but if it was that widespread, then there's probably a whole bunch of pieces scattered all over the place that they're still trying to pick up.
Right. Yeah. Well, both of those incidents we'll have to continue to follow and keep an eye on and see where that goes.
Yeah, and hopefully there won't be any more coming out before before the holiday that we have to pick up. But
Yeah.
yeah, all right. Thanks a lot, Lindsay. Good to see
Awesome.
you. Take care.
Thank you.